How's it going, everyone? Excellent. Thank you so much. My name is Castro. As mentioned, I'm this social eco-preneur, and my overall focus is really trying to make a positive impact in the world by empowering others, primarily the younger generation. I'm an energy consultant here, clean energy consultant in the state of Florida, and I help to really drive demand for energy efficiency and renewables in the commercial sector. But I'm also the executive director of a nonprofit organization called Ideas for Us, and our overall focus here is to advance sustainability at these levels.
Good morning, I guess. I'm Clayton Ferarra, and I'm a biologist, and I have the pleasure of serving as National Science Director for Ideas for Us. I'm one of the founding board members that came into the organization in 2011, and as you'll learn today, we've done some very, very exciting things in what is relatively a young, fledgling nonprofit organization. I also have the pleasure of working with our collegiate chapters. As you'll learn today, we're an organization that has a pretty big reach around the country. And in the southeastern United States, I work with young people to help them take action and realize the change that they can make in the world. So I'm going to start off with something special. The picture behind me is something that you've probably seen before. It's actually among one of the most famous pictures ever taken. And just like any great piece of artwork, any great painting, it's not necessarily the imagery, but it's how it makes us feel. It's the perspective that we get from it. And this is a photo of incredible perspective. Just as the world changed when the Wright brothers flew at Kitty Hawk, humankind could look down from our pedestal at the rest of the world for the first time with completely new eyes. This is the same type of image that we got. It's pretty amazing. But what it caused, and the emotional stir of when it was taken, in the dawn of the 1970s, a decade where we had tremendous environmental change. The invention of the Clean Air and Clean Water Acts, the Endangered Species Act, all of these great triumphs that came out of the environmental destruction that we were facing were very much so supported, largely, by images like this, and the effect and emotion that it gave to people to care about our planet. In the words of the late, great Carl Sagan, this is certainly an amazing place, and a place where every story ever written, every poem ever composed, every piece of music, every war ever fought takes place. This is it. This is home. So it's a very important thing for us to keep in mind.
There are probably some of the greatest challenges to ever face humanity currently happening right now in the 21st century. We're beginning to see a number of different things, from literally in 2012 seeing the record-breaking heat waves across the entire world. We're seeing that there is an incredible explosion of the middle class that's happening in the developing worlds, particularly 600 million people entering the middle class by the 2020 in India alone. We're also starting to see that we've hit a point at which we have 7 billion people on this earth, and things are beginning to continue to exponentially grow, potentially past our carrying capacity. And so oftentimes we see these huge global challenges, but realize really one person can't really do it all. And that usually is the perspective that we all have. You know, how can I personally make a difference when we have these what may seem impossible challenges ahead of us? Part of Ideas is going out into the K-12 school realm and actually helping to empower the next generation that are coming behind us, so that eventually sustainability becomes the culture of humanity. And when we were beginning to interact with these youth at these schools, sustainability and environmental challenges were too difficult for them to grasp, especially when you were talking about first graders, third graders, even fifth graders. And so what we began to see is a lot of these challenges can be compartmentalized. They can be actually sanctioned between different themes, what we call different pillars in our organization. And before we knew it, we started to see that really these challenges fell within primarily 5 major themes. That includes energy, water, food, waste, and ecology. And within each one of those realms, we challenged these youth at these schools to think differently, about where they're getting their energy from, or how their waste is being distributed, or the quality of the water that we're getting, and how we're actually going to sustain the growth of food production across the world. At this current point, it's nearly impossible to do. It is unsustainable. And so these 5 pillars began the theme around our organization, and a way to resonate with the younger generation to understand how they can change their lives in order to help solve some of these global challenges that we're talking about. So in Orlando earlier this year, we decided that there was a need for community engagement. There's a need for an ecosystem of innovation within our community, because we, although we're seeing these global challenges, we're also facing a lot of these right here in Central Florida. And we saw that there was a disconnect between students, between civic leaders, between professionals in our communities who weren't cross-pollinating. They weren't coming together. And we ended up creating this kind of model, a think and do tank we call the Hive. And the whole purpose of the Hive was to be an interdisciplinary, multi-generational group gathering on a monthly basis, where we identify one of these challenges and collectively, literally crowdsource ideas on how we can engage the community and actually making them forward. It was a model for how we could actually bring people together, including this little guy over here. And so we got excited, and since February of this year, we've been actually coming together and convening and actually implementing a lot of these action projects in the community.
So the amazing thing that we found is that when you talk about organizing, and you talk about doing things in what seems to be an endless multitude of fields with a limitless amount of overlap, it can be hard to communicate to people. It can be hard to show them that it's replicable. So one of the biggest tools that we have on our side is things like this, a graphical chart representation. And in this, it goes through a simple flow of what we're doing. Assembling a team, finding a place to hold meetings, coming up with the type of event that we want to have for the community, and then slipping into this perpetual wheel of innovation, and drawing from different organizations in the community to come together month after month in this cycle, dealing with different topics, and creating an ecosystem of innovation. So the nice thing is that we've been doing this since February, and unfortunately our meeting place is going to close down. And we're going through the motions of finding another one. Luckily, it's not going to be too difficult for us in Orlando. We have a lot of support, and we're very lucky for that. But even us, in the creators of this approach to a think/do tank, we're starting right back into this cycle. We have our team, but we're going to go into finding a place, follow the same schematic, and go back into the perpetual wheel of doing these projects, rotating one of these 5 pillars every 2 months. So it's definitely a model that someone can mimic, whether or not they have anything to do with environmentalism, with coming up with sustainable solutions. It's more so an approach to getting people together and having that interaction between one another fuel this type of dialogue that directly leads to innovation. So, as an organization, we've grown tremendously since 2008 when we formed. And we attribute a lot of that to biomimicry and the aspect that we've created an organization that is more like an organism, and for a number of reasons. But I think the most important reason is our diversity. Just like in a natural habitat, what makes a natural habitat so rich and considered to be more valuable than another habitat is its biodiversity. Biodiversity is fantastic because it provides a multitude of ways for energy to flow through a system, from the non-living abiotic factors, things like sunlight and water, into the living, like plants and animals, bacteria, fungus. So when you're trying to plan a solution, that end result, diversity is incredibly important as well. Because after all, if you want to get somewhere, you have to leave where you are. And putting us in a room with a whole bunch of other environmentalists, other people who feel the same way that we do, we're never going to get anywhere. You have to go into the lion's den and bring as many different people as you can to the table, whether or not they think like you do, whether or not they're from the same walk of life as you have. And if it works, and you know how to take those suggestions to heart and manage and steer something, you come up with a diversity of solutions. Not everybody is a weed puller. Some people want to stand on the sidelines. Some people want to manage. Some people want to pull out their checkbooks, hint, hint. And depending on how you want to go about finding a solution, having a diversity where everyone can fall in line and make a contribution is tremendously important. So really, so far, we've delved into three major areas: ecology, energy, and water. Vast subject areas, a vast amount of things that we can do. Because our mantra is that if you want to solve a global problem, you come up with a local solution. And you do it again and again and again and again and again in every community. So for ecology, we wanted to start out strong. We planned a cleanup of a wild and scenic river called the Wekiva in Central Florida. We brought out students. We got into canoes. We went to a little explored area and got a lot of trash out. It was an amazing experience, and it was something very special for a lot of people who'd never been there that day. For ecology, we did an amazing eco car show called Lead the Charge. We also did a tour of a solar center, and for the most part, many people were out around panels learning about how they work, learning about the importance of them for the first time in their lives. And for waste, we brought in artists and a whole wonderfully sourced community team to come together and do this whole display about the dangers of plastic bags. They made a plastic bag monster that was basically symbolically representing the big plastic gyre that we have in the Pacific, and going through a Walmart that we partnered with for this to go through and take plastic bags away from people as they were leaving the store and give them bags that we created and upcycled so that they could return again and again and use these and remove the use of plastic.
So one of the major themes, though, that has an incredible nexus with NASA and space in general is really this energy. It's really the new energy future. What is it going to be, and how will we actually switch from the energy that built our world to the energy that's actually going to shape our future? And as Clay was mentioning, energy has been kind of our theme for August and September, really trying to engage the Central Florida community in learning where their energy is coming from, how they can change their behavior so that we can use less of it, and what the actual impacts of energy generation are from the current standpoint that we have. And so we went out to the Stanton Energy Plant in Orlando and were able to actually tour it with people from OUC as well as Duke Energy, who helped to manage the system. And we learned about single-axis tracking, about large-scale industrial photovoltaics, and how we can potentially use these types of technologies in a diverse portfolio of energy to get us to the next level of production. So as Clay was mentioning, we've been using this kind of model of bringing a diverse group of students and people together to come up with these ideas and come up with these innovations, predominantly at the university and school level. And what we've seen is since 2008, Ideas has grown because of this model to now over 20 universities across the entire United States. We became accredited by the United Nations in March of 2012, went down to Brazil for the UN Conference on Sustainable Development, the Rio Plus 20, and we were able to interact with over 350 youth from 110 different countries who are ultimately trying to advance the sustainability to address these problems. And since then, we've seen groups start up in Ghana, in Togo, Tanzania, Uganda, Sri Lanka, and many other countries. And the overall goal here is, again, empowering the youth to show that they are the next generation. They are the solution to a lot of these challenges. And although we have 7 billion people on this earth, 50% of them are under the age of 30. In Africa, 70% of the population is under the age of 30. And so really, the true opportunity of the crisis at hand is empowering the next generations to show that they actually have a stake in this, that they have an ability to move forward. It's interesting because we are not the only ones who are thinking about think tanks for our communities. In 1727, Benjamin Franklin in Philadelphia created something called the Leather Apron Club, also known as Junto. And his goal was to bring together a diverse group of people in their community so that they can debate things such as morals, politics, natural philosophies, and even share business ideas so that we can progress our community and our economy forward. And since then, Ben Franklin has, well, this concept of junto, or the Leather Apron Club, has expanded around the world. Major cities such as Hong Kong, such as Dubai, and a number of others have created these monthly ongoing juntos, where they're trying to bring together their community to really advance that business and move things forward. So it's incredible to see that these models can be used both at everything from a kindergarten and elementary school all the way up to universities and even in the community, and even in places such as NASA Kennedy Space Center. The ability to bring together the brightest minds in the entire world are in this room and at this place. So what exactly is the opportunity here? What we started to look at is Kennedy Space Center is obviously connected to many different realms within the new energy economy, right? We have things such as actually just looking at efficiency-wise, commercial building efficiencies, or our components within the buildings that actually make them operate at the most efficient way possible. We look at things such as actual generation of energy, whether it's photovoltaics or newfound wave technology that can not only make electricity but produce clean water. We're looking at actual optimization and smart systems, advanced metering infrastructure that allows us to have something like a microgrid, where Kennedy Space Center can be its own island within the entire state of Florida that's actually being powered and has two-way communication and has actual on-site distributed energy production. The ability for Kennedy Space Center is also poised to bring in private sector industry. Imagine Kennedy Space Center being a center for innovation, right? A regional hub where we're bringing in private companies, whether it's Lockheed, Boeing, and the works, and bringing in some of these technologies that are in the death valley of the technology ready level, that are trying to get to commercialization and market, but can't for some reason. And 80% of these ideas and innovations that people have fail. Why? Because they don't have the expertise and they don't have the connections that staff within NASA Kennedy Space Center and the bright minds here can actually make in order for them to get past that death valley and into the marketplace and truly innovate. So we started to look at some of these clusters, and I picked kind of 4 of them just to really look at. But transportation sector is a huge one. We're beginning to see that our consumption of fossil fuels at 20 million barrels per day in the United States is becoming completely unsustainable. It's actually causing us to go into unconventional sources such as Alberta tar sands or hydraulic fracturing or even deep water horizon wells in order to get the same exact product and commodity that we're buying at the gas station. So transportation sector has a huge opportunity for innovation, especially spaceflight. You're also looking at storage potential, both at fuel cell and storage. Energy storage is the next breakthrough. It is how we're going to get from the traditional coal-fired power plants and natural gas plants to a clean energy economy. And it's going to be finding ways to store electricity at a commercial and industrial scale so that we deal with the intermittency problems with some of these technologies, right? So it's going to be storage. Here at NASA, we can innovate that. And finally, biofuel production. A lot of people are looking into algae fuels, as you've heard, cellulosic ethanol, and other sources, gasification. And there are ways in which we can actually innovate and find the critical points that allow us to kind of get to the next level with these technologies and really make it an impactful commodity into the market and transition us away from these harmful sources. So what are the KSC capabilities?
There's a lot of things that can be done here already. Things like investigating solar panels being used in disasters to create energy, different types of transportation and electric vehicles. There are so many different things that are low-hanging fruit that can help really develop a lot of the ideas here that people can have and bring them into a place in the public realm that they're readily available. After all, the more companies that you have creating these things, the cost goes down and it fuels innovation, competition, and eventually evolution of these technologies. And this is a fantastic place for that to come out of. So I do want to make mention today, of course, today is September 11th. And I think that one of the important parts of September 11th is not only a remembrance of that day, but also to keep in mind all of the wonderful things that America is. And I know for me, growing up, NASA was one of those wonderful things that made me proud to be an American. So this is an incredible call to action for the future of NASA and for the future of this country, that our best days aren't behind us. Because this incredible innovation that we can have that will spawn out of this is something that can really change the world. Because if we don't come together, if the people who are alive right now don't do something and don't innovate, then Houston, we have a problem. Things are going to go terribly, terribly wrong in our lifetimes. I say this to my students all the time, that in their lifetimes, things are either going to be very rosy or very, very bad. So all of us have a part to play, whether it's in our own communities, in our schools, in our institutions, and that's an important thing to keep in mind. And it's an important thing that can start here and continue in the Kennedy Space Center for time to come. After all, it's not rocket science. Thank you very much.
I guess we'll open it up. I think we have a...
time for questions or no? No? We've exceeded.
Okay.
All right.
Thank you very
We will
much.
be around. If you'd like to ask us some questions, we're happy to talk to you. Thank you.